Hey folks, how are you doing? We're going to do some more summer steelhead flies. Today we're going to be doing a quick variation of the General Practitioner. Excellent classic pattern, shrimp pattern for steelhead year-round. Today we're tying it in a size 5 Alec Jackson steelhead iron using 10-aught Veevus for our thread. This is going to be a little scaled down summer fly for summer steelhead. I'm thinking mostly Clackamas River, Sandy River, Deschutes River steelhead. It's an excellent pattern to have in your box. Pretty easy to tie as well. So let's get going. So I've got my hook and thread started. We're going to tie in some flat tinsel, the double-sided stuff. This is size small. We're going to tie with the silver side facing us. We're going to take that all the way down to the barb. There we go. Bring that back up to about there. I'm going to start wrapping this up carefully. We want to just overlap our wraps slightly so as not to allow any of the thread or hook shank to show through. You could use a medium tinsel as well. Makes this part a little easier, a few less wraps. I'm going to lock that in on the underside here. Oops, getting crazy with my bobbin. Okay, making sure that looks good. And we can trim that out wherever I set my scissors. No matter how much I prepare for these videos, there's always something. Okay, now we can take and tie in our tail material. We're going to start with some orange deer hair. Bucktail would be the preferred in this instance. I have some belly hair that I'm working with, some deer belly hair. I don't have belly hair. I have deer belly hair. We're just going to trim out a small amount. Getting rid of, we want these longer fibers, about like so. And we're going to tie that in back here. We want this to be the longest of our tail materials. So we're going to give it a little more than the shank length of the hook, maybe 1.5 times. And we're going to lay that in right on top of our hook with a nice loose pinch wrap. We're going to get some good loose wraps there before it flares out too much. And we're going to just tie this in. Now you can kind of try and lay this stuff down and work your way up. But you're probably gonna, like I'm going to, end up trimming some of this out. And some of it's going to be covered with the dubbing. So I'm not too concerned with it, but I do want to try and keep a fairly even body without any major bumps and that sort of thing. Trim out some of these stragglers that don't want to behave, and that looks okay. Okay, some of these I don't want. Not that the fish are gonna mind, but I just am a little bit of a stickler for that. So we have our longest tail material. Now I'm going to take some Ripple Ice Dub in shell pink and just a light pinch out of there. This is some nice crinkly long fibered dubbing material just to add a little sparkle and flash to it. I'm going to lay that right on top and secure that in. We can kind of wrap forward a bit on this to help taper out our body. Come back to our tie-in point, and we're going to tie in one more tail material here, which is going to be a golden pheasant tippet. We're going to V-cut this so that we have, just like here, trim that tip out. Now we have a V-cut, and we can lay this in on either side of the shank here. I'm going to pinch onto the shank and kind of position these. These are going to be our pincers, our shrimp pincers. When I have that in place, I'm going to pinch everything together and do some loose wraps to start. And now I can really get in there. Trying to keep that stem on the top of the shank here. We're going to work our way back up. And there we go. Pull that around into place. Sometimes it'll twist a little on you, and that's okay. It's gonna, once you fish this, it's gonna get kind of all beat up and blended together. Okay, from this point we can tie in our rib material, which is going to be a small gold oval tinsel. Tie that in on the side of the hook all the way back to the tail point here. And now we can start working our dubbing body. I'm going to be using a orange dyed seal fur, which is my preferred material for this, although it is tough to get and kind of outlawed in the US. This is legally sourced that I've had for a long time. Ice Dub makes for a good substitute here. STS Trilobal, you could kind of blend the two together. Wouldn't be a bad idea. But the reality is you're just not going to be able to beat the natural here. This orange seal fur, or well, seal fur in general, just makes for a very nice, spiky, sparse, spiky, translucent body here. It's just some great material, especially once it hits the water. And working in these small batches, we're just going to dub up the body. I don't need this to be super bulky. So we're just dubbing on enough to cover up the thread. And a nice tight dub noodle there. Little more here. That ought to do. Now we're going to advance our rib up. I'm going to get a full turn on the first one, then I'm going to go 4 or 5, trying to be out on 5, 3, there's 4, and out on 5 on the underside of the hook. Tying it off on the underside of the hook just helps to eliminate odd bumps, and then once we start getting into the head portion of our fly, it will help to keep a small head once we're finished here. I'm going to take and just brush this up a little bit. I want to really get that spiky, buggy look to it. So I'll take my toothbrush and give it a scrub. It's not a crucial step, but it just definitely brings out the magical properties of this seal fur. Okay, that ought to do for us. And next I'm going to take and hackle a collar of orange guinea. Prepare my feather, and we're going to tie it in by the tip. I'm going to grab the tip here and pull back the fibers of the feather that I want for my hackle. Now I've got just this little tip in there, and we're going to tie that in right on top. I'm going to take and pull the tip back and get a couple more wraps there, securing that in, and start working ahead. And then I'm going to carefully trim out the tip there. Next, we're going to hackle this on. I'm going to run the blade of my lance along the stem here. This is going to help train the fibers of the feather back. Try and do this without cutting anything out. I think I kind of did a little bit there. Do this part gently. We're not actually trying to cut anything. And I'm using the lance because it's a little bit duller than my scissors. This is going to help in this hackle process a little bit. We're going to pull these fibers back against the stem and begin hackling our collar. This first wrap's pretty crucial to be kind of delicate with it. Looks like my stem's twisting up here. That's okay. That'll happen with these guinea feathers. You just kind of got to take your time and pay attention to what's going on. And wrap one wrap right in front of the next without getting too many crazy twists in it. And eventually it's going to start to behave. We'll go ahead and use up the entirety of the feather. It may have been 3 or 4 full turns. Is about what you want. If you can get away with 3, that's great. We don't want too much bulk in these. And that's okay. That looks all right. So we'll get that really secured in. Next, we're going to take 2 golden pheasant flank feathers, the red flank feathers, and I'm going to stack them one right on top of the next. And this is going to be our shell back. We're going to try and lay them in right on top, like so. And sometimes this can take a little management here. So what I like to do is I trim up my stems, and I take a nice flat unserrated plier, pinching everything together so it stays stacked how I want it. And I'm going to just start crushing those stems so that they're flat and a little bit more manageable. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the stems through the eye of the hook and get it kind of laid down in place here where I want it. Pinch down, do a couple loose wraps there. I'm going to check it. It twisted on me, so I'm going to back off and try again. definitely want this right on top of the whole fly, whole everything here, without it twisting. And once I have a loose wrap over it, I can kind of pull everything into place. Still isn't quite perfect, and you may not get it perfect, but we're going to strive for it. There, that's a bit better. Now I can kind of gently pull the stems, bringing that all into place. And you can see it's shelled right on top there. I want a little more on that side, so there I'm just using my fingernails to gently manipulate this around until I'm satisfied, and I think that's going to be okay. Just a little more manipulation there. And then once we're satisfied with where that's at, we can get a few more wraps on there. And once you're good and secured in, we can take and push these stems back through. Or if you can, we can go underneath. And we'll tie it in on the underside, again, helping us to keep a small head. Cover all that up with not too many wraps. Okay. And now we can take and whip finish. Couple 3-turn whip finishes ought to do. Make sure that's nice and seated. Trim that out. Now you can apply whichever head cement, UV cure goo, what have you. Shell's a little crooked, but you can see there we have a nice shell top. There's your little shrimp pattern for summer steelhead. Thanks for watching.